CEOs are driven into massively leveraged positions or dilutive acquisitions in order to please Wall Street. And Wall Street's not the evil enemy here. The problem is the cost of capital is 20% or 15%. So you're either going to pursue a strategy of dilutive acquisitions or a strategy of excessive leverage, or your third strategy is Apple could borrow $25 billion at 1% or 3% interest, buy Bitcoin that yields 200% interest. And it's what would you say to Tim Cook? You would say, Tim, if you can buy $100 billion company that's growing 100% a year and is profitable, you should do that.
Right.
What is Bitcoin? Bitcoin is 100 billion, you can buy $100 billion worth of Bitcoin or 10 or 20 or 30 billion worth of Bitcoin. It's growing 600% this year, but 200% a year on average. So my message to any company, whether it's Microsoft or Amazon or Apple or Tesla, is why don't you take the asset that you can get a lot of? You can go borrow $20 billion worth of capital at 3% interest. And why don't you go do an accretive acquisition? And an accretive acquisition is something growing 100 or 200% a year. By the way, what's better, for Apple to buy Disney or for Apple to buy Bitcoin? Because if you buy Disney, you're buying 100 million moving parts and a lot of complexity and a lot of risk and a lot of competition. If you buy Bitcoin, your treasurer just had to go buy Bitcoin. There is no competition. There is no employee base, right? There is no, the moving parts have all been worked out for a decade. They're not changing. So it's a much better balance sheet idea than what's being laid on the table for most CFOs or most CEOs right now.
So I'm going to ask this question. There's a question here, and I think you're going to follow me. There's a great movie, Jaws. There's a scene when the mayor, they're at the beach, and he's talking to Brody, and he says, if you yell barracuda on the beach, people look around, not a big deal. You yell shark, and you have a panic on the 4th of July. Now, here's my question. MicroStrategies, in some ways, was the barracuda. You went down this path, and people looked at it, but it didn't create a panic or a stir. If Apple were to do exactly what you did at MicroStrategies, would that be the panic on the 4th of July? Would every single bell and whistle go off at every level of government and in every boardroom? And so with that said, do you think they're sort of inhibited by, do you think they're reticent to do it based on that premise alone?
When I tweeted at Elon Musk, I said something, and I really meant exactly what I said, right? And most people took it tongue in cheek, but I was very serious about it. I said, you want to do your shareholders $100 billion favor, convert your $20 billion balance sheet from cash to Bitcoin, and then all the S&P 500 companies will have to follow you, and it will become $1 trillion favor to your shareholders. And what I really meant was, you buy 10 billion in Bitcoin, you're going to double it. You can go borrow 10 billion in convertible debt. You're going to double it again. You're going to generate $40 billion of investment income on a $40 billion revenue company. Your stock is going to move north, and then everybody's going to realize, holy crap, this is safe. And here's what you're really doing. If you do that, you're basically pointing out that the price discovery has disappeared from the bond market, and the treasury strategy of holding bonds should be replaced with a treasury strategy of holding Bitcoin. And so it just takes one mega company with conviction to do it, and you can, at our size, when it was 200 billion in market cap and we leaned on it with $1 billion to 2 billion, we could drive a certain amount. But now at $1 trillion in market cap, you lean on it at about the $10 billion to $20 billion level, and you could do that now. And that's what would catapult Bitcoin to be a $5 trillion asset. And you could say, oh, this is frightening. Not really frightening. Gold is 10 trillion, right? When Bitcoin is 50 trillion, then you will say it's a lot better than gold. I mean, how much more valuable is Google Maps than Rand McNally Maps? And how much more valuable is Apple digital photos than Kodak, right? It's very reasonable for digital gold to be 5x to 10x more valuable than gold. And I think that, Guy, it's just out there waiting for someone with conviction to do it. And but here's the general logic. If you're Tesla, you know, what do you got to do to create $700 billion of market cap? You got to double your operating income, double your revenue. You know, it's not easy to go from $40 billion of electric cars to $80 billion of electric cars in 1 year or 2 years. It's not. How's Apple going to do that? And so the answer is you fix your balance sheet, right? You fix your balance sheet. As soon as you realize $100 billion of cash at Apple is a liability, burning 20 billion in shareholder value a year. As soon as you flip that to $100 billion as an asset generating 40 billion, 20 or 40 billion in shareholder value a year. What is Apple's profit a year right now? I mean, you're like, the point is, don't I double their income? Like, you take operating income and tack on investment income. Their investment income is nothing. Their operating income is everything. You cannot, and this is the paradigm shift, right? Everybody thinks they're living in a hard currency environment. They think Argentina is somewhere else and Venezuela and Zimbabwe is somewhere else, right? And that's not us. As soon as you realize that the dollar is inflating at 15% a year, if you crank in any number north of 10% for the next 4 years, and you flip your mindset, the conclusion you come to is you cannot create shareholder value or preserve shareholder value without a financial strategy that includes hard assets or strong financial assets. You might like take Apple, and let's say that all of their sales are going to be limited to Venezuela, Argentina, and Zimbabwe, and then give me all your good strategy ideas and product ideas. And again, the answer is your strategy is a losing strategy financially until you get it through your head that you have to flip your balance sheet from a liability to an asset. And the second piece of this is you cannot sweep your cash flows as, you know, from a strong currency into a weak currency and hold it. And so ultimately, it's a very simple, straightforward approach. Apple could certainly do it. Any company that has $10 billion of firepower can do it. You know, and Guy, I will end this thought with another tweet. It's Archimedes, 2,500 years ago. He said, if you give me a lever long enough and a fulcrum upon which to place it, I can move the world. Okay, the fulcrum is Bitcoin, $1 trillion crypto asset that nobody on earth can screw with.